Hi there, this is Lee from IELTS Master, and today we have a Band 7 Plus vocabulary lesson. This is Lesson 8, Crime and Law. Now, crime is one of the most common topics in the whole exam, especially in Writing Task 2, where you're often asked how society should deal with it, so these are words worth getting right. Here's the idea behind this whole course. Most students try to raise their score by learning more words, or longer, fancier words. But that is not what examiners are looking for. What really separates Band 7 from Band 6 is collocation. And collocation just means knowing which words go together. So crime is just a word. But reduce reoffending rates, now that is a Band 7 phrase. So for every word today, we'll look at the definition and 2 example sentences, then the collocations that make it sound natural, and exactly when to use them. And at the end, you'll get one small action step. Ready? Let's go. So, what are today's 5 words? They are deterrent, rehabilitation, offender, reoffending, and punishment. Now, you might know some of these already, but knowing a word and using it like a Band 7 candidate, those are 2 very different things. And the difference almost every time is the collocations. First, deterrent. So what is a deterrent? It's something that discourages people from doing something. In these essays, from committing crime. It comes from the verb to deter, which means to put someone off. So if a tough punishment puts people off crime, we say it acts as a deterrent. Makes sense, right? Let's look at 2 examples. Many argue that long prison sentences act as a deterrent to serious crime. And critics claim the death penalty is not an effective deterrent. Now the collocations to act as a deterrent, a strong deterrent, an effective deterrent, the deterrent effect, and to serve as a deterrent. These are the backbone of any punishment essay. Next, rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is the process of helping an offender change and return to a normal, law-abiding life. And here's the key contrast you'll use again and again. Rehabilitation versus punishment. Reforming people rather than simply punishing them. For example, some countries prioritize rehabilitation over harsh punishment. And effective rehabilitation programs reduce the chances of reoffending. The collocations to keep are a rehabilitation program, offender rehabilitation, to focus on rehabilitation, successful rehabilitation, and rehabilitation over punishment. Next, offender. Now, an offender is simply a person who commits a crime, and it's far more precise than criminal or bad person. Here's the clever part. Watch how one adjective changes everything. A first-time offender, a repeat offender, a young offender. Same word, very different meaning. It comes from the verb to offend. For example, courts often treat a first-time offender more leniently than a repeat offender. And young offenders usually benefit more from education than from imprisonment. The collocations are a first-time offender, a repeat offender, a young offender, a persistent offender, and to rehabilitate offenders. Next, reoffending. And this is the word that makes you sound like you really understand the topic. So what does reoffending mean? Well, let's break it down. Re means again. So reoffending is simply offending again, committing another crime after you've already been punished. Got it? Good. Because the real test of a prison is whether it can reduce reoffending. For example, education in prisons can significantly reduce reoffending. And high reoffending rates suggest that prisons are failing to reform inmates. The collocations are to reduce reoffending rates, the risk of reoffending, to prevent reoffending, and high reoffending. Finally, punishment. Punishment is a penalty for doing something wrong. But here's the thing. The band is in the adjective. Listen to these. Harsh punishment, capital punishment, which means the death penalty, corporal punishment, which is physical punishment, and a fitting punishment, one that matches the crime. Same noun, but each one tells the examiner something different. For example, some believe harsh punishment is the only way to control serious crime, and others argue that the punishment should always fit the crime. The collocations are harsh punishment, capital punishment, corporal punishment, fitting punishment, and lenient punishment. So here's your action step. And it's a simple one. Choose 3 words from today's lesson and write one original IELTS sentence for each, your own sentence, not a copy of mine. And in each one, try to use a collocation. Maybe act as a deterrent, a rehabilitation program, a first-time offender, reduce reoffending, or harsh punishment. That one step, turning a word you recognize into a sentence you've actually built, is how vocabulary moves from your memory into your writing. And if you'd like to practice properly, the free IELTS Task 2 practice pack is linked down in the description. Pick a crime question, plan a quick paragraph, and put 2 or 3 of today's words straight to work. That really is the fastest way to make this vocabulary your own. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.